Hello, today I'll be reading from 1 Peter chapter 1 verses 13 through 16. I'll be reading from the ESV. Therefore, preparing your minds for action and being sober-minded, set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance, but as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. Since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. All right. So the main thing Peter's trying to get across here is he wants you to be holy. He wants the reader to be holy. So we'll see how he gets there in this passage. So starting in verse 13, he says, therefore, preparing your minds for action. Now, one thing to note, this first phrase here, preparing your minds for action, it might seem like a command, but it's actually in the English grammar something called a gerund. So it's a verbal. It's not the actual verb, not the actual command, but something describing the command, describing the actual verb. So it's in a way defining and adding to what the actual command is. And another interesting thing about this phrase, preparing your minds for action, the literal understanding of it is gird up the loins of your mind. Gird up the loins of your mind. Now, you see, back in the New Testament culture, people didn't wear pants, they wore tunics, these long shirts, in a sense. And then, if they were going to run, in order to stay modest, what they had to do was grab the bottoms of the tunic and then tie it together. And they would do that if they're working or they're expecting they're going to have to sprint or run for some reason. So here he's saying, gird up the loins of your mind. So he's saying, get your mind ready for something. You're about to run. You're about to do something big. So you need to gird up the loins of your mind. And then he says, and being sober minded, being sober minded. So what he's saying here is he wants you to have your mind focused, not distracted, not all crazy, not silly. He needs your mind focused here. So he's saying, first he's saying, gird up the loins of your mind, be ready to do something, ready to do something big. And then he says, and be sober minded, focus in here. This is really important. And here's his command. He says, set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Now, oftentimes when we hear something like that, we wouldn't think that a command like that is such a big deal. He's saying, prepare your minds for action and be sober minded. And then you'd think after a build up like that, the climax would be something like, now go share the gospel in all the world, or something like that. Or go plan how you can um, love the people in your church and show them Christ's love. You think of something more active in a sense. But his command is set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. So his big command here, the thing he wants you to have your mind ready for, the thing he wants you to be sober minded about, is he wants you to be putting your hope. He wants you to be thinking about, hoping in the grace, the joy, the gifts of God that we'll receive when Jesus returns. So, in a sense, he wants us to think about the gospel and the implications of the gospel towards us. So, this is a great command. He wants us to have joy. He wants us to have delight in our salvation and in the gospel. And then let's see where he goes in verse 14. He says, as obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance, but as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. So we're used to this. We're used to hearing something like this. In the Old Testament, New Testament, we hear constantly the need to be holy. And he says we must be holy as the one who calls us is holy, as God is holy, as Jesus is holy. But what importance does the previous command, setting our hope on the grace that will be brought to us, what importance does that have on being holy? It has everything to do with being holy. Because you see, what Peter knows is that you can't be holy if you're not setting your hope on the grace that will be brought to us at the coming of Jesus Christ. See, we might be able to keep up out of our own willpower holiness for a while, but we need something motivating us. We need something to give us power, and that is the grace of Jesus. So he says, think about the grace that will be brought to you when Jesus comes back. And with that in mind, he says, now as obedient children, be holy as Jesus is holy. And then he says in verse 16, since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. And that is a reference to the Old Testament to support his claim there. So he's using the Old Testament again to say, you shall be holy as the Father is holy, or as Jesus is holy. So the main point of this passage is be holy. How are you going to do that? Is by setting your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ.